Oh man, Fooly Cooly is really close to my heart.
That power's mine! My eyebrows! Your head is the only one that works, Taco.
But Fooly Cooly feels like a tie for my favorite anime, combined with another anime made by the same studio that I'm not gonna get into right now. But with Fooly Cooly really just being one of my first loves when it came to anime, with me just remembering the first time I saw it was like on a Toonami block when I was probably like a really young man. When I saw it as a kid, it's not like I interpreted everything or mostly anything at all, but I really loved how it looked, how Studio Trigger really had made it like look together, how sporadic, how insane, how bombastic it really looks when it comes to this animation. But the weird part is, it always stuck with me, always stuck around me. I saw another 2 or 3 more times. I think one time when I was a teenager, another time when I was a more or less a young adult, which is like probably 2 or 3 years ago, when I did a video on it. And let's just say that video is really outdated. It also one of my first ones, so don't go back to that. Don't do it. Don't fucking do that. Let's stay right here. I feel, or however I am interpreting or liking what I'm watching. What did I just say? But just saying all this to say, like, it always stuck with me for a really long time, but at the same time also saying like I slowly started to get it more and more every single time I watched it, and I sort of just grew into my own interpretation of the events that I had saw when I witnessed it one more time for this video. Well, probably not one more time, because this is my favorite anime. I probably will watch it a few more times. But yeah, oh yeah, one more thing, sorry, my bad. I had to also put in like if it's any other different interpretations, or maybe there's a full-on interpretation of the events of that's going on in Fooly Cooly, please tell me in the comments or tell me how you guys think or feel about it. But realistically, I'm just gonna get into how I feel and also what I think of certain characters and what I think of like how they ended up. So I'm not really gonna say anything about the story, so you just go ahead and watch it. There's only 6 episodes. I think you can withstand 6 episodes if you want to get into it or not. But here we go. The first person I want to start out with is Mamimi, right? And I sort of just want to get to a clip note version of what this character is so I can get into what I think about them. Now, Mamimi, I feel sort of a little bit bad, but also not really.
It's complicated.
For all the set events that do happen in Fooly Cooly with this character, right? Because with Mamimi, it really just starts out with Mamimi as well as Naruto being together in a sense. Not being in a full-blown relationship, but just like Mamimi doing sexual things to Naruto. And as well as the age gap, but we're not going to talk about that. But for the showing just like a sad manipulation and just sad leading on when it comes to Naruto as well as Mamimi's relationship that they do have together. It's something I really want to get into when we get into Naruto. But continuing with the facts of Mamimi, Mamimi also likes to play a game that has to do with fire as well as gods, right? And she sort of gets obsessed with it to a certain degree and point. And at the same time, you sort of hear that fires are going around, or fires are starting to happen all around the city here and there. Then there's a huge red flag with Mamimi when it comes to Naruto, right? Where she used to date his older brother for a certain point in time until he left to America for baseball, and he just got a whole new girlfriend, almost like he forgot about his past life that was always back in Japan. Now for me, Mamimi is a lot of things, but if I had to like really spice it down to anything, I think it would be loneliness, depression, escapism, even just a person scrounging around for the look of hope that they can't find, and lastly just feeling like self-destruction. So to put my whole narrative together, let's start from the beginning with Mamimi. So Mamimi first meets Naruto's brother when they were younger, and it seems like an arson fire had happened, and that's when the first time when she had met Naruto's brother for the very first time. Obviously time passes, he goes over to the United States for baseball, and she's still stuck there in Japan, and the only person that she's realistically with is Naruto's brother, and the only person that she probably would have is him. And as I mentioned before with the fires, it's not hard to connect 2 and 2 together with her doing the arsons as well as her playing this game that involves fire as well as this quote-unquote god that she keeps talking about. What it feels like it spirals all the way down when the boyfriend goes to leave to America for a scholarship in baseball, and she basically just sit there and left there, right? And the thing is with that is she feels lonely. She doesn't necessarily have anyone to go around or be with, and on top of that, she already gets bullied from other classmates in a river that we sort of see for like a quick 2 seconds, really just painting a picture and a narrative like how lonely she truly is, and she doesn't feel like she has anyone. So she basically has almost escapism when it comes to everything that she has around her, whether it be Naruto, the games, the gods, or the cases. She just wants to find a better tomorrow for herself, and she tries to find out with Naruto, right? Because with Naruto, she tries to be sexual with him, she tries to bite on him, try to talk to him from time to time to fill that loneliness. And then there's also the thing with the arson and the fires, right? Now I think that has 2 meanings behind it. One is her trying to again fill in that void of her finding a god and sort of a purpose, maybe even sort of in religion or her own fake religion in her head when it came to the game, as well as her starting those fires and arsons. But then there's the also secondary thing, right, where I think it's also her doing the fires before like sort of the games and stuff like that, because of Naruto's big brother. Maybe because she's trying to spark up again for him to come back. Maybe he might come back if she starts another fire, or maybe this set of events might happen all over again where she might meet someone else new, or something else better might happen if she continues to do fires. And And just to quickly go back to her and Naruto, it just genuinely feels like she's just using him for escapism itself, even by the sense of her calling him a different name completely, not even his own actual name.
Takun, what are you doing? But he isn't Taro-kun. Hang with Takun and my shoes floated away. Takun, you're not supposed to do things like this with me.
She's genuinely trying to like craft her own world of her own that's already in her head, but spitting it out outside her head to Naruto to create her own world, because right now her life really isn't in the best of positions right now. And I'll save a specific scene that happens in episode 5 for Naruto section, but I'll just skip straightly to the end, right, when it comes to Mimimi, right? Mimimi, I feel like by the time we get to the end of it and we're at the point where she sort of like takes a picture, and then we hear things about her just like leaving the town and sort of making a name for herself when she sort of leaves.
Mimimi left town. She said she wanted to be a photographer. I don't know what happened to her after that.
I interpret that in a very weird way. The way I weirdly interpreted it by the time we sort of get to the end of the story with me is like she takes the picture, and in between that time and sort of the last few minutes of the show where we hear that she left town and she sort of made a name for herself and stuff like that, I interpret it as she found a purpose or a meaning in her life in photography, and she generally wanted to leave town and start anew, because this town basically has too many scars and wounds over her, and she can't necessarily start over or have a better beginning than her just leaving town and really starting fresh to have a brand new start to actually start her life. And with this, finding her hope, finding her meaning in life, and actually starting and taking a step forward in her life of what she wants to do. But stopping with Mimimi for now, I really want to get to Haruko. Haruko herself, she's just like the worst. Like, it's just nothing to really necessarily say, but she's the worst. She manipulated Naota, his family, and seemingly Amara, regardless if it's seen in friendships, relationships, being a teacher of somebody, helping them, or seemingly helping them with whatever they have as a problem or issue at the point in time. But in reality, is trying to steal something, which is seemingly the Pirate King's power by the time you get to the end of the series. And she's clearly willing to do whatever it takes to actually get that, like I said before, with the manipulation, or maybe taking someone's father and placing him in a closet for like God knows how long with the roaches and being dehydrated and starvation and stuff like that, or even sinking a whole town or even crushing a whole planet just to get what she necessarily wants. But to me, there's only one question I necessarily have when it comes to Haruko, right, where it makes it less obvious, at least to me personally, when this scene always pops up. There's a question that necessarily scares me. It genuinely, honestly scares me, because I don't know the answer to this question. Was any of it genuine at all? And some may ask, whoa, what do you mean if any of it was genuine at all? Obviously none of it was genuine, or maybe this or that was genuine, but most of it wasn't. And the thing that makes me put it all into question is this scene right here.
Wanna come along?
You what?
Her just straight up asking him, do you want to come along? That in itself makes me just straight up want to think if anything was genuine. Like, let's just say, not just for like relationship purposes, but for the purpose of like her being a friend, or maybe a mentor, or maybe something guiding, not just a relationship in general. Because for what purpose would there even be for her to even genuinely ask him, do you want to come along? Now she then instantly sort of says, nah, you're just a kid, it's fine, you can just stay on the planet, I might see you next time. And obviously, when I know for a fact when she says I'll see you next time, she's not gonna see him next time ever again. And if anything, before I get off of the topic of Haruko, if anything, she generally feels like the mask, right? You know, the mask where someone puts it on and they just turn to a Looney Tune villain that necessarily has the deepest, darkest, worst desires ever that come to surface, and it's just complete and utter fucking chaos when this person's around. And since we're on the topic of masks, I think it's important to talk about Eri.
You think that's embarrassing? With a head like that?
Eri is a person I feel like, in my opinion, has mask on her face. When we first see Eri, we see Eri like around the town, but when we really get into Eri is about episode 3, where she's in a car talking to a secretary that is basically alluding to having sex with her father, which is the mayor, and basically cheating on her mother. But she really has this attitude of, I really don't care, as well as if everyone wants this to happen, then it's what's supposed to happen. She then gets excited and giddy with the secretary when she starts talking about her own little play that's going to be happening soon. I then want to hard cut to when she's in Naota's house, right, because of a certain incident that happened, and she basically talks to her father for a quick second. We don't get to see him, but she talks to her father for a second about how grown she really is about the situation, as well as sort of what the secretary said at the same time too. Then hard cut again to when she's talking to Naoto in the room, and she's basically saying how she basically made him be a part of the play, how she switched out the ballot for the voting system, so he specifically is playing this specific part for this play, so the play is perfect for when both of her parents come in. And also how no one's gonna suggest or really think it's her because she's the class president, and also she's such a good girl, no one ever think it is her. Now with all that information, not to really go into what I mean, whether she's putting up a mask or front whenever you see her. So when you first see her and she's in that car, she's really talking to that secretary, and she has like, it feels like a mask on. It feels like it gets released a little bit when she's talking about or getting hype about the play that's gonna happen. She sort of has a no nonsense, no care attitude to what's going on, because what it feels like, at least to me, is like she has this plan, or she has this mastermind Eisen level plan that's gonna work out, and then once it happens, everything's really gonna go back to normal, with the plan being basically the play to have both of them in a room and basically seeing her on the stage, and I don't necessarily have everything going together. Sort of, if anything, remind me of that old ass movie The Parent Trap, if anyone remembers that out there, where it's like the two twins and they try to get both their parents back together by having them in the same room and shit like that. Just like reminded me exactly of that. Also on top of that, it feels like this line right here just sums up her as a character as well.
You're Puss in Boots, the one who tricks the prince. He hides who he really is and pretends to be someone else forever. But in time, he becomes that person, so his lie becomes the truth, see? He transcends the mask. Well, don't you get it? That's how he finds happiness. That's pretty good, right?
No! Well, maybe.
If you replace everything with the he with a she, and it sort of implies to her, I felt like she's faking it in the sense of like she's acting like she's super grown or super up there as an adult, when realistically she's still just a kid. But she keeps acting out the lie and basically pretending like it's gonna happen, and sort of feel like it's gonna manifest, it's actually gonna be what it is. And that sort of does happen in a way, because she goes ahead and actually does a grown-up thing, which is she goes up to her parents and sort of tells her how basically she feels. And necessarily it's almost like a happy ending, like in a fairy tale, where everything sort of goes back to normal for her, in the sense of like both of her parents are now sort of back together, even though that's probably not gonna last. And she even tells the truth to Naruto by the end of the episode, saying that the glasses are fake, basically insinuating that at the time she was trying to make him feel guilty, or no, not really guilty, but try to make it feel like he's on the inside, like, oh my goodness, she actually wears glasses, oh, I'm knowing more about her, even though in reality it was all a fucking fake, a front, and a lie. And one more random thing I definitely want to add when it comes to Eri, right, is like the feeling of like sort of tranquility or understanding or knowing every single time we see her after that, right? After episode 3, every time we see her obviously with her haircut. It feels like she's living more her truth, and then as well as she looks like the look on her face whenever she sees Naota is like she knows what's going on. She has like a complete understanding, or she's like, okay, well, this is like the pathway he's going with.
To do is say what he really feels. That's what I did, and I cried and stuff. To who? To my mother and father.
Okay, but now we got all the ladies out the way. I actually want to talk about Commander Amara. Okay, so Amara is actually really interesting when it comes to the story of Fooly Cooly, right? Because whenever you see him, he actually drops tidbits of lore or information, or quote unquote his feelings when it comes to how he feels about the situation, or Haruko, or what's going on right now, with him basically being this governmental agent that sees Naota here and there. And it feels like he's really necessarily guiding him in a certain direction of like, one, staying away from Haruko, as well as two, implementing like, hey, me and you are like the same person, we sort of experience the same things in a certain way or form. And I will say there are certain times in the show where he necessarily believes him. Naruto believes Amara about what he's saying and what he's doing, especially when this is the first time Haruko really like leaves and she feels like she's not coming back. The eyebrows sort of signify that's on his forehead, like, oh, okay, I really believe what you're saying, and you're really telling the truth about what you've been saying the whole time, right? But as soon as he sees Haruko, it's almost like she instantly manipulates him, like, oh, she's back, oh my goodness, and the eyeballs fall apart, and it's just like signifying like he definitely just cares about Haruko a lot. Even just seeing her just implements like, hey, I don't care about what the fuck you're telling me right now, and just sort of his strong feelings over facts. And also, speaking about feelings while we're on that topic, I do think it's also feelings that occur with when it comes to Amara, right? Because when he sort of speaks about Haruko and he sort of talks about her, he's like, oh, it's like, oh, her boyfriend that she really cares about, and they used to be mortal enemies. And I feel like that's just like sort of his feelings coming out instead of the actual facts of what's actually going on, because I definitely feel like the fact of it is that she doesn't necessarily care for him that much. She necessarily just cares about his power. She even says by the end of the show that she wants to eat him and take over his whole power that he has.
Taco, you can't do that. That power's mine.
Amara also feels like he's like a parent that sort of like pushing you a little too hard into one single direction, and when you get pushed too hard to a single direction that necessarily you might not know that you want, or if you do want it or not, it makes you go to the other direction that you're not supposed to go to in the first place. Even in the way he talks, it feels like his word is law. Whenever he speaks, it's not really a rebuttal to whatever he's saying. And I do feel like there is a world where like they could have been almost the same person, but I don't feel like it is, because obviously Naruto's way too young. He has like his whole life ahead of him. When it comes to Amara, he's already has his bend, he's laying in all his fundamentals, ideas already fleshed out and already done. But I think it's finally time to get to the man, the myth, the legend himself, Naruto. For Naruto, it's like you can't help but feel bad for Naruto, right? Because on one end he's getting manipulated by two people on both fronts, and then on the other end of things he's getting pushed and pulled in different directions, and it doesn't necessarily give him any space to comprehend or understand what is necessarily going on. It doesn't give him any time to unpack all of this shit that's happening to him in this point in time. Naruto really is like necessarily a victim.
You're a victim. There we go, CSI.
And I mean like a victim on all fronts, not just criminally, but I also mean just a victim of the times, a victim of him and his childhood, his adolescence, and the pathways we all sort of choose and pick when we're growing up, and there's not really necessarily a guide to it. You just gotta figure it the fuck out. And by that time you're growing up, you just gotta hope to God that you know you have it all figured the fuck out. But Naruto's a little bit smart. He sort of gets it a little bit, and it sort of gets shown to you in my favorite scene in the whole entire show. It's the scene where Naruto as well as Mimimi are on top of a mecha mechanic, a robot that's attacking the city again. And as both of them are on top of it, even though Mimimi knows Naruto's the only one that can stop it, in the end the only person's name that she's screaming is his brother. That's the only person that she keeps saying over and over and over and over and over. Again, and he's just yelling, why are you screaming his name? I'm the only one here that can save both of us. What is wrong with you? And just in general, this episode really just shows extremely well how the situation just paired up nicely, right? Because in this whole episode, it's like a gun cocking back in his head whenever he gets cocky in this episode, and he just realizes like, hey, I'm actually getting some recognition. Everyone's starting to like me. I'm starting to actually be popular, or everyone's starting to talk about me a lot more, giving him some newfound confidence. And that sort of leads him into taking Mimimi to like this public location where he wants to just like show her off, as well as for them to have a good time. But Mimimi doesn't want to do that because she thinks this is not the relationship that they have together. And in reality, it's just basically showing and painting a picture for Naruto to be like, this isn't what you want. She doesn't actually give a shit about you. So when we get back to the scene where she's just saying his brother's name, it's like almost vividly clear, like he knows the answer the whole time ever since the beginning, but he just didn't want to acknowledge it till right now. So the payoff just becomes extremely beautiful and well thought out and planned out when he himself just screams at her, hey, my name is Naruto, don't ever call me by that name you keep calling me by. He then saves her and then saves the city, and by that point he does not ever talk to her ever again. That is my GOAT. Having just some type of self-realization that something isn't for you and actually attempting to move on from it and not going back to it like he has been for like the last 4 to 5 episodes. But in that same breath, he still has that other cancer, that other thing that's been manipulating him the whole time, which is obviously Haruko. And by the time we get to the end of it, it is all left into interpretation. And what I mean by interpretation, I mean the scene specifically where Haruko asks him the question.
Wanna come along?
Because the only person talking in the scene is Haruko. She's the only one that's making the decision here and now. And realistically, I think that it's a bit overlooked. Like, silence means a lot, right? Silence does mean a lot when it comes to having a conversation. It could mean necessarily like you agree with something, or maybe you don't agree with something at all. On top of that, the saying of the eyes are the wonders to the soul. And when I looked specifically at Naruto, I felt like he has an understanding of, he knows what Haruko is like, and everything that sort of everyone has been saying is basically true. And so he doesn't necessarily agree with like necessarily going with her and taking her hand and necessarily going to wherever other planet just to get the Pirate King's power. And yes, I know that's a huge leap in logic, but I don't know, this is just how I feel. Now, to answer the age-old question,
What in the fuck does Fooly Cooly mean?
after all my research, after all my studies, after all my lookings of the show over and over again, I can easily tell you it means nothing but everything at the same time. Alright, I really sort of come to this conclusion basically because of like every single time Fooly Cooly is mentioned, it's always mentioned in a sense of like something happening that could be either Fooly but Cooly, or both Fooly and Cooly. Like for example, when he's in the hospital and she says like a whole long ass word, big ass word, it's like Fooly Cooly. Or when the sense of them talking about either sex or sexual things happening, they're like, oh, that's Fooly Cooly, because it's sort of a Fooly thing to do, but it's also pretty cool to do at the same time. In turn, meaning basically anything.
Fooling around! Fooly Cooly! What's Fooly Cooly?
Also, what the hell is the point of Fooly Cooly?
If you had to ask me, I think it has a double jointed meaning, right? I think one, it definitely has the meaning of relationships and how necessarily it can go. They can either be manipulating, or the relationship can either be extremely toxic to you, or it can be a complete detriment to your life, like when he goes to Haruko and then he doesn't go to school for the next few days. And there are people that are going to try to necessarily take over your whole world and force you to necessarily do things you don't want to necessarily do, like with Eri. And it doesn't necessarily have to end in the terms of relationships of you having a sexual partner or just a partner in general. It could also be relationships of parenting. Like for example, if you have Amuro and just like him necessarily pushing or implementing things in his head that necessarily can correlate to either Amuro himself that he's just placing onto Naoda and just putting him into a specific direction in life. Then there's a second meaning, which I sort of implied earlier, which is I think it's just about life. I think if I mainly had to pick one, I think it's about life. You obviously, like I said before, with relationships and how that sort of thing goes with people, no matter if they're in your family or not, you're gonna have people that are positives and negatives in your life, and you really got to be there to choose necessarily what you necessarily want to do in your life and how you're gonna go forward with how things are going to be moving, no matter if they're the worst thing in the world or the best thing in the world. You learn from that experience and you become your own person. And sometimes that can include you being hard-headed and you not want to listen to anyone until your own, and you have to learn that lesson on your own. Or people are out there that are willing to help you and actually forward your life that you choosing to go by. Or the people that love you and trust you and want you to figure it out on your own, just like his father. His father has a one-off comment where he literally says that he wants him to be free. I know that he can make his own decision and he knows what he's doing.
Unlike that hamster, Naota's enjoying its freedom.
But other than that, thank you guys for watching. Thank you guys for watching, liking, commenting, subscribing, and really just sticking with me throughout this whole video. I really do appreciate it. I'll see you guys in the comments. I'll see you guys on wherever I am at or the next video. But other than that, thank you guys for watching. Goodbye.